Foundations of Project Management, What You Need to Know If You Aren't a PM. My name is Caitlin Baker. I'm the creative manager here at GovLoop, and I'm so excited for this session. If you came from the lunch keynote, hopefully you really enjoyed our speakers and you got a chance to grab something to eat, take a little stretch, grab some water. I know it's been a very busy day, and we have a lot more content coming at you this afternoon. So for this session, when you look up the official job description of your role, it might not say project manager, but each of us are project managers in some part of our job. Whether you're advocating for new funding, contracting a new technology, or inputting data, you're utilizing project management skills. So today we have our expert, Wendie, who will share the foundations of project management so that you can fine-tune your skill set. First, though, a few housekeeping things. If you've attended our other sessions, this should be familiar by now. Please post with us on social media if you use it using the hashtag NextGenGov. We love to hear about what you're learning today. If you do have any questions, please put them in that Q&A tab, or you can throw them in the attendee chat. If you have any tech issues, my colleague Andrew, who's on the back end, can help you out. Or if you have any questions for Wendie, please share them. We have plenty of time for Q&A and would love to answer any questions that you have. You can also check the resources tab. There you can download the slides from today and other resources that we have. And then everything after this will be available on demand, this breakout session, as well as all the other ones in the keynote. So if you're trying to decide between sessions, you can still watch all of them afterwards. And then just as a heads up, everything on your screen should be somewhat variable. So if you need to extend the chat or extend the Q&A or the poll, any of that, you can kind of move around and adjust so that you can make sure you can see everything that you need to. If you're looking to get CPE credit today, there are 3 things that you need to do. Attend this live training for the full duration. We have about an hour today. Make sure you take the polls throughout the live training and double check that you're hitting that submit button for it to record, and then complete the CPE evaluation. Those forms can be found in the resource module on your screen now, and then also in the resource center in the full environment. So if you don't get to download it before we're done with the session today, you can still access it there and everything will be fine. All of CPE credit should be sent to you by a week or so after the event. So with all of that, I would like to introduce our speaker today, Wendie Veloz. Wendie, let me find it. Yes, Wendie is a social impact strategist, coach, and consultant. I'm so excited to have her here today to talk about project management. So with that, Wendie, I will hand it over to you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So I am Wendie Veloz. This is, like I said, my probably 3rd NextGen. I'm a big fan of GovLoop. I've spoken for GovLoop multiple times on lots of project and non-project related topics. And this is a topic that I'm really familiar with because I've had my own journey in this, not exactly a project manager, but wanting to be a project manager, trying to figure out how to be a project manager. So when they approached me about the session, I was like, wow, this just dovetails with my own experience so well that I can't wait to present this. So I will tell you more about myself, but I really just wanted to call attention to the fact that in the resources tab, there is a downloadable, fillable PDF. It'll take you straight to my website. You pop in your email, pop in your name, and you'll get a PDF in a Google Drive that'll just pop right up for you. Download that, and you can actually click things and fill in the skills that you have as we're going along with the presentation. So it's not in the presentation anywhere. It's in the resources tab, and you'll have to go over to Google to get it. It'll download straight to your desktop, and once you get on your desktop, you'll be able to fill it in with exactly the information for you. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that before we headed to the next slide, which is a little bit more about me. And if, when we're getting started, I noticed that there's actually a lot of federal agencies and a lot of state and local government folks. If you guys could put into the chat your name and where you're joining us from and your organization, that would just help us get a little more lively in the chat and also get to know each other. So I'm excited to see who you are and what you're working on and where you're at. And if you have any thoughts about project management, throw that in there too. Happy to hear that as well. So a little about me, I'm Wendie Veloz. I am the founder of Wendie Veloz Enterprises, which is a boutique consulting firm based in Maryland. And I have over 20 years of experience in funding different grants, working in the federal level, the state level, and the local level. And I also saw my Harris County folks there, so shout out to Harris County. I used to work at Harris County. And also just focusing on strategic planning. So what we do at Wendie Veloz Enterprises is helping organizations be more sustainable in their work, focusing on nonprofits and social businesses, and really bringing that world together so that we can make a bigger impact. I do a lot of work around systems change. I'm an experienced funder. I'm also a social change expert. And for this purposes, just so you know, I'm a self-taught project manager. So I don't have a PMP, and we'll talk about a PMP in a second, but I am definitely someone who has had to learn on my own how to be a good project manager. So I hope to bring you all of those lessons today. All right, let's go to the next slide. So why does this matter, right? Like, why are we even talking about project management skills? Employers will have lots of projects in the future, and they will continue to have projects, millions of dollars of projects. In fact, over $88 million of projects are projected by 2024 from the Project Management Growth and Talent, from the Project Management Institute, which is the group that does the PMP certification, the Project Management Professional. So this estimate is really showing you that the need for people with project management skills will only grow in the future and will continue to grow. And the ways that we can help organizations be efficient is to be better with our project management and to make sure that we're wasting less time and less resources as we do our work. So I just wanted to bring you these two statistics to ground this presentation in the beginning and help you understand why this topic is so pivotal, not only for you as a professional, but also for the efficiency and the effectiveness of your organization, which we all obviously want to contribute to, especially as public servants, contributing to the public and making sure that we're using resources as best as we can. And one of the ways we can do that is stronger project management. So let's go on to the next slide. And thank you guys for jumping into the chat. I love it. I love to see how many people are joining us from all over the country, which is amazing. I see Philly. I see, again, Harris County. I see you guys. I also see folks from Virginia, which my neighbor here in Maryland. So appreciate all of you guys joining us today. And there are three things that I want to really help you understand in this presentation. Project management skills are not just around project management. They're also skills that you have as a human and as a professional that are going to contribute to your ability to be more effective at project management. So I want you to think of it as actually two different pieces that come together to help us reach outcomes. And what we're really trying to do is get to those outcomes, but we have to utilize the other skills that we have. Our project management skills, which for this purposes, whenever you see PM, that means project management. The other thing that we have are transferable skills. And if you've ever read the book, Who Moved My Cheese? This is all about transferable skills. And so you might already be familiar with this particular concept. But we'll dig into what falls into what bucket and which one you actually have already and which ones you need to hone in the future. And of course, all of this is around getting to the outcomes that we've identified for the specific projects that we have in front of us. So let's go to the next slide. So transferable skills is where I want to start today, because these are things that I think sometimes we have them and we just don't realize that they're part of the mix or they're really important. And sometimes we might have them and we might think, oh, I'm just really good at that, and not give ourselves credit that it's a marketable skill. So transferable skills are things you can take wherever you go, whatever project, whatever organization. It's stuff that just kind of makes you that much better at your project management. It doesn't mean that if you're bad at communication or you're not readily communicating with your team is going to fail. It just means that the better you are at these skills, the more likely your team is going to do really well at that efficiency and effectiveness. So communication, leadership, time management, problem solving, critical thinking, adaptability, negotiation, and customer service. These are basic things we often learn in the workplace, right? Depending on what jobs we've had in the past, some of them might be more important in some roles or more advanced in some roles, and some might not be necessary if we're not necessarily customer facing, for example. But the things I want you to think about for this presentation and this list are actually these three questions. What do I already have? Where do I excel? And where do I use these skills? Because the chances are, even if you have been working on honing all of these skills, you don't use them everywhere you go. You might use more skills in one environment and use a completely different skill in another environment. If you're not in a leadership role now, you might desire building leadership skills so that you can take a leadership role later. So these are things that over the course of your career, you can continue to work on, you can get additional support and coaching around. And it's also sometimes about just recognizing your own places that you naturally have talents and leaning into those talents so that you can really shine in that particular area. Let's go to the next slide because we're going to dig in even just a little bit more. And I love somebody said, Tina is saying, we're all projects management. She's project managers of our own families. Yes, absolutely. If you have a household that you manage, you're probably managing all of the things related to your household, the food, the laundry, the children's soccer, right? All the things. So I could definitely appreciate that, that comment. So when you're thinking about these, I said there's 3 questions, and the way that you kind of translate those questions for yourself into, well, how do I take action, is to think about first the skills that I'm already good at, the context in which I use those skills, and then are there other ways to apply those skills in other places? So this is that part about leaning into our natural talents as humans, or the things that we've already worked on, because we don't want to start from zero at building our skill sets. We really want to make sure that we're moving forward from wherever we are in our career at this current moment. And moving forward, kind of, you have to take stock before you can do that. So this first part, if you go to the first part of our worksheet, and if you download that, you'll see that there is a little part in there where you can actually write a note to yourself that says, what am I already good at from transferable skills? You can also check the boxes to tell yourself which ones you are already working on and which ones you need to hone. So I would suggest just taking a second, if you haven't downloaded that yet, to go and grab that and make sure that as you're thinking about these questions, you're writing notes to yourself, you're checking the boxes, and you're giving yourself credit for the things that you already are really good at. Now, the other thing I'll say about the applying it elsewhere is sometimes when you go to apply a skill in a new environment, it's not what the person was asking you to do in that environment, or they didn't know you were coming with that skill. So sometimes when you go to do this application, you actually have to advocate for yourself to be able to use this skill. And you can do things like telling people, hey, I'm really good at communication. Is there anything here that's been breaking down in our team around communication that I might be able to look at for you, or that I might be able to help with? Or for example, if you're not in a leadership role and you want to be, you could ask for additional training or resources around being an adaptive leader or being an emotionally intelligent leader. So really digging into not only the principle of leadership, but different styles of leadership that can help you grow into the next role. So let's go to the next slide. And I love this. Everybody is agreeing with you, Tina, that way. We've got a lot of project managers over here managing some families and home life. So how do I do this improvement, right? Because being a good communicator and being adaptive doesn't make me good at time management, which doesn't necessarily make me good at problem solving. That doesn't also make me good at negotiating or critical thinking, which also doesn't make me good at customer service, right? So it's not like once I jump in that I get the other skills. What happens is over time, as you adapt certain skills and you have different contexts in which you can use those skills, you're able to then kind of get this whole entire cycle down. And what I've found over my career is that sometimes I'm not a good negotiator. In fact, I'm an awful negotiator for myself. So I did a lot of coaching, and business coaching in particular, a lot of training and a lot of reading around how do I negotiate better? How do I become more, I guess, open with my negotiations and transparent, so that not only am I getting what I need, but the people I'm serving are getting what they need. So it's really about awareness for yourself, asking yourself the critical questions, and then taking action that's going to help you get better. So what I suggest for everyone, if in terms of transferable skills, because there are so many options on how you can get resources to yourself, pick one. Just start somewhere. If you want to start working with the coach, start working with the coach. If you want to have a mentor, start working with a mentor. If you want to read some books and get some more knowledge before you jump into another step, order some stuff on Amazon. There's loads of ways to work your own schedule around getting more skills. But what I don't want you to do is walk away from this presentation and feel like, oh my God, I got to do all these things. I have to go get a mentor. I have to go get a coach. I have to get some books. That's not what I'm telling you to do. Find a solution that works for your schedule. Find a solution that works for what you need, and start there. And then move into some of these other realms that you can further grow into. All right, let's go to one more slide, because I think there's a poll coming up soon, right?
We have the poll next. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to take a quick second for this poll, but I want to make sure as you're doing the poll, you're also thinking about not only what your top transferable skill is, but because you might have multiple ones, but just picking the one that seems right now like the one you could say, I can stand out with this one skill, right? In whatever environment I'm in, it doesn't matter. This skill out of this list is the one that absolutely I shine at. So let's do the poll and then check in. Are there any questions that folks have so far?
I don't think we've gotten any questions yet. I'm sure we will get plenty. I love that customer service is on here because this is a conversation I was having with my sister who's applying for jobs recently, and she's like worked in coffee shops and stuff. And I'm like, there's so much you can use from that. Like customer service is good in any role you're going to be in, even if you, especially if you've worked in the service industry. That's like a huge skill that you can put down when you're applying for jobs and looking at other things. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think we could talk about that one in particular because when I worked in the government, even though I wasn't considered in a customer service role, like say in a technical assistance role where I'm answering a phone and a hotline, but every single person who came across my desk, I treated them as a customer. So I can give a little bit more information about what I used to do. I was in the Department of Health and Human Services for over about almost 15 years. I started as a presidential management fellow, worked my way up into a kind of like a project manager, grant manager role. I was eventually a team lead when I left. And the one thing that was consistent throughout my service was that anytime someone came across my desk, they knew I would be responsive. I would either answer their question with the best of my ability, or I would find an answer for them or find someone who could. And I would do that in a very timely manner. So a lot of the feedback that I would get from my grantees and the people I served in the public was that I was really good at helping, which I just would see helping as my job, but I wouldn't translate helping into customer service. So now that I am in a role as a consultant and outside of the government, I understand that helping is customer service in some ways. Sometimes it's actually fulfilling the client, but other ways it's really making sure that I'm providing high quality customer service. And then while we translate into the answers for the poll, there is a question around project management professional. I think I answer that a little bit later in the presentation, so I'm going to hold on to that one for a second.
We'll go into the results now.
Yeah. Wow, this is great. So interestingly, and I'm curious in the chat if folks want to tell us, maybe what makes you think you're not the best at time management? Because this one is, this is an interesting one for me because I think that sometimes a lot of us struggle with time management and we automatically find ourselves not excelling in that area. And that one could be an area that more of us could take action in trying to figure out what could we do to be more efficient and effective with our time. So that's really interesting. Problem solving, I love that problem solving is a high one because I think for public servants, we encounter a lot of different types of problems all the time. We're constantly having to pivot and solve a problem and then go back to what we were doing. So having strong problem solving skills is really good for this group. I think that's really helpful to see. And then of course the customer service part, I think you guys, again, for the reasons that I spoke about, kind of resonate with that too. So I don't know, Caitlin, what do you think of these, of the poll results?
Yeah, I think they make a lot of sense. I mean, problem solving, I think is just such a good one. That is, if you can solve problems, you can do anything, right? Like you can it means you can figure it out, which is kind of just the starting point for so much.
Yeah. And then I love this comment in the chat too, thinking about that it's not my highest skill. I'm good at it. I can do it, but it's not my best skill. I think that that's a great way to interpret it. And then not having time to manage everything. I can appreciate that as well. Workload versus expectations. Yeah, let's have a talk about that. When I left the government, my workload was in a very, very high stressful place. And the expectation was that you would do it, but also that you wouldn't do it with any extra time because because you only had so much time that you were contracted to, or you were hired to work in this job. So I can appreciate that idea of workload versus expectations. And sometimes that conversation is difficult for you to take to a manager or team lead to say, I know that this work needs to be done, and I know that we only have so many people on the team, and therefore the expectations and the time and the capacity are not quite mapping up. And I think that those conversations can sometimes be difficult, but need to be had if the lack of time is having some sort of consequence. So if it's having a consequence on the team getting to the outcomes or being as efficient and effective as they need to be, or if it's having consequence on the team members, maybe their health or their attendance or things are suffering because of this imbalance of time and expectations. Great. I love that you guys are coming through the chat. Just keep it coming, keep it coming. We'll try to address things as they come in. So let's go to the next slide and talk about project management, because project management, again, is more than just the thing that's on the paper and the Gantt chart, which sometimes we think of project management as the scope of work and what we're expected to do and these outcomes we got to get to, and then we need to go through the timeline to get there, and we'll talk about all those things today. But really, project management to me is your ability to do your work well multiple times with the skills that you have and the team that you have. And so it's about not only the skills that you need, but also the people and the different disciplines and roles that need to come together for this work to happen. And you as a person, you don't need to do everything. We'll talk about that. But we want to make sure that you're contributing to the team who's managing the project. Now, of course, if you're a solo person doing a lot of project management, which is like I am today, sometimes you need to ask yourself, do I have these right skills to do everything? Or do I really need to develop a team? And in my case, I can say I don't have every skill, obviously. So I have had to develop a team. I think when I was in the government, the thing that I didn't have control over was who was available to be on the team, how many team members I had, and what exactly they were assigned to do. So it can get really complicated. But if you think about it, just as project management is more than the scope of work and the outcomes, but really is about the vehicle that we're using to get there and how can we do the best with what we have allocated to us. So let's go to the next slide. So what is a project? Technically, and I wanted to make sure we were all on the same page, a project is temporary. A project is not intended to go on forever. Sometimes in the government, we'll use words like initiative, program, like systems change, things that have a little bit longer shelf life or longevity than project. I know there was a big stigma around any kind of initiative that we created being called a project. Even though one of my flagship initiatives that I created is called a project, it seems not permanent when you say something is a project. So if we take that element away and we just say, even if it's not permanent or semi-permanent, it's something that we want to get to an initiative or get to an objective with a specific scope or a timeline and with the resources that we have. So they're trying to get you to a goal, but you don't always have to add resources to an organization to get to that goal. Sometimes we actually have to use the resources that we have wisely. And I think that's one of the things in the chat that we just saw is like, there's sometimes an expectation to do more with less and less and less. And I think that we probably have all felt this as public servants over the last few years, that you're increasingly expected to give, but maybe don't always get more resources allocated your way. And I can actually completely appreciate that comment. Let's go to the next slide. So who is on a project team? This is one of my favorite slides because sometimes we don't realize that we could have the capacity we need, but they maybe aren't in spots that we need them in, and we might need to borrow from some other teams or borrow some other experts. So if you had a full-blown project team, there would probably be every single one of these roles on the team. Project manager, a team lead, a subject matter expert, another subject matter expert, right? So they might be two different subjects. Risk manager, a business analyst, a technical lead who works on just the specs for certain things, a procurement manager, contract officer. And then there might also be a whole load of just worker people who come in for fractions of time or full time that might be doing communications, data, training, designing, and marketing, things like that. So those are all valid team members. There's nobody who's more important over the other. And sometimes team members play multiple roles. So you might have a subject matter expert who's also really good with data, and they might be coming together for one role that includes those two things. So when you're designing your team and you're looking at your capacity, you want to see, to get to that outcome, who do I need? What skills do I need? What technical expertise do I need? How much time do I need from this person? And how can I get all these folks together to move in the same direction? And this is where our leadership, our adaptability, our communications, our customer service, like all these things come together to help this team shape the work and then move it forward. So the first part of this team is the norming, storming, forming, congealing, right? Like really getting folks to the same vision, communicating that vision to them, what are the expectations, and then setting that roadmap to move forward. So sometimes in that beginning phase, when you bring all these really strong folks together, it can seem like a little bit tensious or a little bit unknown, right? People are not yet bought in, people are not used to working together. So if you are the lead in this team, one of the big stressors or roles could be to simply bring everybody together in a harmonious way. And that's really where, if you have those leadership skills and those adaptability skills, you can really shine to bring folks together and move them forward. The other part is sometimes you can feel like you're actually at the bottom end of the team, right? Where you're feeling like you're doing all the work and you're almost drowning, but you're not getting the support from higher up. And that can feel really difficult and taxing. So I just want to say, either way, whether you're at the top of the team org or you're the bottom of the team org or somewhere in the middle, it can always feel like a squish when you're trying to get things done. And so the more you're able to lean on your other team members and communicate and assign tasks appropriately, all those things, the less that squish becomes likely that it's not going to equal success, because we really want to get this vehicle over to the outcome, right? So we're trying to be as successful as possible. Let's go into the next slide. Yep. So what are these really concrete project management skills that I think folks really need to hone or build in their skill bank? And these are specific not to transferable skills, but really to people who are in a project team. So budget development, I can tell you, I was just telling Caitlin today, I was developing a budget till 10 p.m. last night with one of my clients. Budget development is huge. If you know how to move costs from one part of a budget to another, if you know how to scope a project and then price it out, that is important. If you know how to create line item budgets, that is important. So all of these pieces around budget development, the way that I got these skills partially was from managing grants, right? So being really years and years of grant management, redoing budgets every single year. I learned how to move money around and manipulate budgets all the way down to the dollar. But the other thing I did, which is a really good tip, every organization we work for has an annual budget. Particularly if you're in a government organization, there's always budget cycles every single year. So the way that I even learned very complex budgeting, which I'll talk about in a minute, was because I volunteered to do the budget for my office. And so when I did that, I was able to better understand not only a project level budget, but an organization or enterprise level budget. So I went from grant budgeting for one organization on one project to multiple projects under one organization, so enterprise level. And then I went as complex as community level, community engagement budgeting, where you're actually taking the budget, going to the community, checking on their priorities, and then getting feedback and bringing that back into the budget development cycle. So you can learn this skill and then keep going and understanding how budgeting can be actually a very powerful tool for communities and for the people that we serve, but also internally in the organization. So the other example I'll give you of budgeting that I've done, and this was actually in Harris County. Harris County recently moved to performance-based budgeting, which means that you have to have a metric tied to your line items. So as you grow programs and you increase staffing, you got to make sure you're being successful with these metrics that you choose. So you have to align the outcomes that we're trying to get with the amount of money that we're allocating to how we get to those outcomes. And it can get quite complex. So as you're moving forward in your project management skill building, you don't have to start at the more complex, but if you see someone engaging in those kinds of changes in the organization, you can always volunteer to be part of the team. And that will help you get exposure to what's going on with that particular type of budget development. Even if you're not a budget person, you're not a number person, I joke with this joke all the time. I am a social worker by trade. I'm a macro level social worker trained in social change and policy. I never went into social work to work with numbers. Never, ever, ever. But somehow or another, I've managed over $40 million and probably secured a close to $500,000 for my clients just this year, right? So budget development to me, I work in the millions and the thousands all the time. It's very comfortable, but not for everybody. So if this is not your skill, don't volunteer and don't move yourself in this direction. You could be good at something else, right? The other thing is scope of work. Scope of work is something that is important for folks because you have to know how you're going to get to that outcome. So the scope is what tells you which tasks you're going to do, maybe how much time you're going to have, or how many resources you're going to allocate to that particular piece of the objectives. And they also, really, it's about setting the parameters for the people that you're serving on how you're going to get there. So the scope development is something that's a very particular skill. And I had to learn it actually after I left the government, when I started writing my own contracts, because in the government, I never worked on contracts. I didn't have to write scopes. But the way that I would work with different clients to understand their scopes is by asking questions, making sure that I have all their parameters and their specs in place, and then figuring out what is the best plan to include their specs and still get to the outcomes. Because sometimes the specs and the outcomes don't actually align nicely. The other thing that you can do if you're not in a place to really jump in on a scope development is to review prior scopes of work for your projects. So your current portfolio or the portfolio for your organization, you can go back and look at current contracts and see what their scopes included, and really familiarize yourself with the types of language that get written into scopes. The other thing you can do is to create your own, which is create your own mock objectives, to create your own mock action steps, and to really give yourself objectives that you can reach. And you can do this for your own career, or you can even mock it up for your office. So it's really about, you don't have to ask your boss all the time for some of these things. Some of these things are things you could just do as a professional to exercise your own skills. And that's what these bullet points at the bottom of the slide are about. Let's go to the next slide. So the other two areas in project management that I would say are really important skills to gain are these ones with time development. So timeline, how do we get to all of the milestones and deadlines that have been outlined for this particular project? And then how do we make sure that we're not actually going over time? Because a lot of the times time equals money. So if we're going over the allotted amount of time in a particular project, that means that we're probably going over budget. So if we want to keep under budget, our outcomes, our activities, and our timeline, they all have to match, right? They can't be grossly out of congruence. The other thing that I did to, again, reviewing timelines and milestones. So if I wasn't working on something where I'm developing a timeline, I would sometimes get a scope and get the timeline for that project, and I would compare them and see if I understood how that project manager developed the timeline for this project when they put the whole scope together. And then the best way to actually understand timelines is to read reports of what happened. So if you're lucky enough to get grantee reports or contract reports of retroactive that tell you timelines in the past, and did people meet expectations or did they not meet expectations on timelines, that is a great way to understand how to develop a timeline moving forward. The last part is goals, objectives, and metrics. These often get sort of muddied in together, but if you were someone like me who's done lots of grants, you know they're very separate things. And you want to make sure that you have them aligned to getting to that outcome and the scope that's going to get you there. So bringing these benchmarks into place, making them realistic for people, communicating them, helping people understand why it's important to collect data, why it's important to review data, why it's important to continuous quality improvement, use the data. All of these things are really they're related. Interesting, there's a question. Yes, this is a great question. I'm going to stop here and answer it. It seems that the scope of work and timeline go hand in hand. Can they be viewed separately? They can, but you would have to back check both of them actually match. So say, for example, one person is developing a timeline and the other person is developing the scope. You want to then bring those two things together at some point, because the last thing you want is a promise and a scope of something due at 6 months and a timeline on your Gantt chart where that's due at 9 months, right? Because those things are then not congruent for the deliverable. So as much as you can, you want to keep them in sync, and especially with that budget part as well. The way that you can get this skill is you can look at your current portfolio and develop other alternative outcomes and metrics, right? Like if we didn't select these metrics and we selected other metrics, what could be other metrics that we could use for the same exact work that we're currently doing? And then reviewing evaluation reports. I've reviewed oodles of evaluation reports in my time, and those have often taught me the best ways to word a goal or objective or metric. And the wording really, really matters in this place. So as you get better at reviewing more evaluation projects and project evaluations and understanding the wording, it becomes more natural to you to just sort of write in that way. So familiarizing yourself with the terms and how people explain goals, outcomes, metrics for your particular work, that's really, really important. And I think next we have a poll coming up, right? So we'll make sure to do that as well. And I know we have some questions that did come through the chat, so we can do those while we do the poll. So what is the top project management skill that you want to learn? So not thinking right now about what you have, but thinking forward about where you want to go. And I'm curious with this group of the 4 that I presented to you today, which one is the most relevant for your career development in the future? And that's what we're really asking with this poll question. So while we do that, we'll kick it over to Caitlin and see, are there any questions that I didn't already answer?
So there's one from a little bit ago asking about communication as a foundational focus. Do you think it should be a foundational focus for others, agencies, et cetera? Sometimes it seems like the projects take priority over that.
Yeah, so communication is interesting. The way I think of communication is internal, external, and lateral. Right. So internal organizational communication about what are we doing and how are we doing it? Are we doing it well? External about if we're doing things well, or being transparent with the public, communicating that way is equally important. We often see that's done by a completely different group. But then there's that lateral communication. And that's one of the pieces that can be difficult in a team, because some people just aren't used to communicating in the same way. Some people like email, other people like Teams, other people would prefer to be on Zoom, right? There's different ways that people like to communicate, especially post-pandemic in this digital, really, really digital age. And so I think that it should be a foundation, but if it's not there, it should be pointed out that it's not there. Because sometimes when what's happening in a team that's making it not efficient and effective and not reaching outcomes is a breakdown of communication. But there's a failure to call it out. And people are afraid to say, well, that was due to poor communication, because they don't want to point the finger at their colleague who didn't communicate the thing. So it can get a little tenuous sometimes when you're talking about lack of communication. So that way, if it is foundational and it is an expectation, when it's not there, it's a little easier to talk about, because you're able to say, well, this isn't following the norm. The norm is good communication, right? Yeah, let's keep, but any other questions?
There was another question about, after a project rolls out or goes live, what should a retrospective or lessons learned meeting look like? How should it be conducted?
This is interesting. I have, and I welcome you to email me for this tactic. I'm happy to show anyone how I do this. But on the planning side and the retrospective side, as a team, I actually use mind mapping as a resource for the team to do the reflection. And I often will walk people through a series of prompts that helps them to map what happened or what they want to happen. And the core of that is really, what are we trying to do? or what were we trying to do? And how did we actually do it, or how do we plan to do it, right? So it kind of goes both ways, but I use mind mapping for that. And that tends to really bring people's barriers down, because you can physically see all of the work that's happened, and you can do that retrospective, transparent conversation with everybody seeing the same thing. Because sometimes what happens in a retrospective conversation is Sally's perspective is this, Joe's perspective is that, my perspective is totally different. And we're talking as if we all understand each other, and we don't always understand each other. So sometimes having a common tool or a common resource for everybody to look at and reflect on and then move forward is important. And so that's what I use mind mapping for. And I'm happy, again, whoever asked that, to explain, to show you examples and all of that. You can definitely book on my calendar. We'll go through all of it. Anything else that I've missed?
There was another question about books or resources that you recommend.
Okay, yeah. I will talk a little bit about that in a second. Okay, let's see what the poll came up with. I'm curious what folks... Okay, cool. This is kind of almost like goals, metrics, and outcomes really, really won the day here. I think that that's great. Yeah, and I would say that that's probably one of the more difficult ones to grasp, because of the fact that it's really helpful with that retrospective look and the evaluation part after. So sometimes learning from prior projects or other things that have already closed down is a really great way to look back at how effective something was and did it really get to outcomes. And that is then often a way to move forward for the next thing. Looks like the second one is budget development. I know I saw in the comments that budgeting is something at least Casey really wants to learn. So I'm excited somebody wants to learn it, Casey. I applaud you, but there's also some other folks there with you. So I hope you guys will definitely jump into your next budget cycle for your agency if you can. And then scope development, timeline development seem to be easier, even a little bit lower, but they're definitely still important. And I would say on the worksheet that I have that you can download, it's in the resources again, be really honest with yourself about where you're already good and where you need to go next. Because what you don't want to do is spend a lot of time in areas that you're already good at that thing. And so you really do want to move yourself in the direction of getting these skills that you need to build up if you're trying to advance your career in this area. All right, let's go forward. Okay, so I talked about this earlier, but I didn't really talk about this quite enough. So I wanted to put it in again. These skills, whether the project management skills or the transferable skills, they can be used across multiple projects, but in different wavelengths at different times. So you might be using, your communication, your leadership, and your subject matter expertise in one project. And in the other project, you might be developing the scope and using your subject matter expertise and needing to grow your budget expertise, right? So every project is not the same. And you as a professional, you can do some things to help yourself move where you want to go. So balancing your project management skills and your transferable skills, doing that professional development, knowing that you maybe need to spend more time developing one or the other or both, or some facets of both. Taking courses and workshops, I mentioned there's a lot of opportunities. I wanted to get back to this PMP question because I knew it was already in this slide. But the formal opportunity that most of us are familiar with is the Project Management Professional Designation, or the PMP. I asked multiple times when I was in the government to get my PMP. I was denied multiple times. It is a fairly expensive certification training. The certification itself, the test isn't necessarily expensive, but the training is expensive. It's also very long and tedious, and you may not pass the first time, right? So sometimes people are reluctant to do the PMP for all of those reasons. It also can be something that seems like you need it and you're really marketable if you get it, but then your agency's like, okay, well, you're going to leave, because so now you have to actually give them a commitment. If you give me this skill, I will stay for 2 more years, right? Because I'll be very marketable once I'm done with this thing. So the PMP is something, is it for you, is really, I can't answer that. That is definitely on you to answer. Are there opportunities for you to get the same skills without the designation? Yes. Are there similar trainings that you can do that will maybe help you and be more effective at project management without doing the full PMP? Absolutely. I did a training through a basic government contractor. I think a lot of us know Management Concepts if you're here in the DC area. I did one of their project management. I also did through the USDA had an online school. I did a very low cost version of a PMP online training through the USDA's online school. So there's other resources out there that you can ask for that maybe don't cost as much. And that I would encourage you to look into. So I hope that answers that PMP question. And you can let me know if it doesn't. Caitlin, I can't find it again. So, oh, how important. Yeah, okay, I think we answered it. All right. And then the last one on this hierarchy is developing your own style, which really to me means you're not going to come into every team the same way. But pretty much when you come across different teams, they're going to get to expect the same thing. So I can tell you in my teams, you're going to expect a lot of lateral communication. You're going to expect a lot of engagement. You're going to expect a lot of ownership on you and giving me the actual outcome after you've done your work. People know how my teams run. And if you've been on a team with me multiple times, you're ready to do the mind map as soon as you walk in the door. So that's my style, right? That's me as a leader. That's me as a project manager. That's me as somebody who's part of a team. Whatever team I go to, I take those things with me. So I would encourage you guys to do the same thing for yourself and figure out what exactly is your style and how can you market that, right? Because your style is just as marketable as any one of those transferable skills. And in fact, in some ways, it's actually more marketable because it is what makes you stand out from Joe Schmo project manager who's also applying for the same job as you. Let's go to the next slide. And I think we're getting close to done. So we're getting into the Q&A phase. So if you have any extra Q&A things, happy to take them. We've got a little bit under 15 minutes left. So you can drop them in the Q&A or you can drop them in the chat. The common questions that I was asked to answer before this slide, and I think before this presentation, I think this is a great one, is how do I talk to my supervisor about this? Like, how do I even approach asking somebody like, hey, I want to get some more skills? Because sometimes when you do that, it seems like, uh-oh, is Sally leaving or is Joe leaving? Because they seem bored, right? They're asking for more work. And that can be really awkward in that conversation. And I've had to entertain multiple conversations like this. And so I just wanted to offer these things that I tried in the past. Sometimes it means like you need to tell your boss that it's not that you're unhappy. It's just that you want to grow, right? Like you want to challenge yourself. You want to move forward in your career. You've been in this position for a while and you really want to get some more skills. So it's not about this, I'm unhappy with my work or I'm dissatisfied, but it's really about me as a human wanting to move my intellectual wellness forward and my career forward and really kind of taking that ownership away from the emotion of it. Sometimes colleagues might think like, oh, you're trying to encroach on my area. I'm the subject matter expert, or I'm the budget person, or I'm the whatever. And it doesn't always go well laterally when you start saying, hey, I want some skills. So you can really help people understand that this isn't about you trying to steal their role, but really helping you to be better at supporting them in their role, or even acting as a resource. Sometimes we hear the word a lot in government, coverage. I don't know if anybody else, you could kind of let me know if you heard in the chat, if you heard the word coverage before. I'm pretty sure I heard my whole entire career. Sometimes when people are out on vacation, they needed somebody to backstop that role. And so you having the skills can support that other colleague in backstopping their role if they want to go on vacation. And that's really important in a team. The other thing about it is just when you're approaching your lead and sometimes the conversation just doesn't go the way you want, and you could be like, I'm never going to bring this up again. I'm going to like never touch this subject. They don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I'm just going to stay put and I'm not going to get any more skills. And that's also not necessarily the best approach because that could really make you limit your opportunities in the future and make your career stagnant. So I would encourage you, if that tension comes up or it becomes a difficult conversation, to just try to find ways to still have the conversation without the tension, or maybe even go up a level and get some mediation to help. Let's go to the next slide. I think we're still on these answering questions. So where do you do this asking, right? Like what is, if you had a three-part plan, yes, three-part plan and how to get these skills that you need, I would say these are the three places to pay attention. One, whatever development plan you have. Sometimes we'll call them individual development plans or IDPs in the government. If you have an annual review, that's a place to talk about that plan for the next year. It's also a place to review in retrospect what you did in the past year. So having the plan and being able to talk about it in your annual review, those two things kind of go hand in hand. And then I love what Nikki's saying in the chat about encouraging people to do job shadowing, volunteering for things, shadowing, taking on tasks. As much as we don't want to do more with less, sometimes it's necessary for us to get the skill. So where we might not feel like we have the time or the capacity to do it, if you want to get the skill, you might need to find a way to do it. And so volunteering or shadowing or getting a mentor, those are definitely ways to do that. So if you were looking at 2024 and saying, in 2024, I want to grow my project management skills, a great 3-part plan is to set up an actual development plan for 2024. Make sure in your 2023 review, you talk about what your goals are for the next year around this particular topic, and you suggest resources, trainings, and investments that you want your agency to make in you. And then you also suggest opportunities for you to exercise that skill so it will benefit your team or benefit your boss. And when you put these 3 parts together, you can, I promise, one of them will probably go forward, maybe not all 3, but one will go forward and it'll help you get to that next level and break through whatever barrier is keeping you sort of in the same place. And let's go to the next slide. Oh, it's our last poll. I'm excited. So after we've talked about all of these different options, and we'll talk about the books in a second, I think that this is a good question because I really want you to go away from this taking action. Oh, I can talk about details, Gina. I am the queen of details, so I could definitely talk about details. The best way to move forward for you. So take the poll real quick and we'll have a conversation about details, because this is something that's very specific, I think, to the federal government. I don't know if local and state do this as much, but I have been on many details. I've been detailed to a White House project and I moved to New Orleans. I've been detailed for CDC to Tanzania. I've been detailed to a White House project that I did for my own seat here in Maryland, but I got to hang out at the White House for a bit. I've done a lot of details, and what a detail is a temporary duty to work on a specific project or scope for another part of the government. And I have been able to add some of these communications and other skills in when I was on detail. Actually, I've also been detailed Department of Labor too, to work on child labor. So I sort of, if you look at my LinkedIn, you guys are gonna be like, this girl has been everywhere. I literally have, because while I was sitting in my seat for about 13, almost 14 years, I was detailed over 5 times to different parts of the government. And so that made a big difference in my skill development and also my career trajectory, and also how many issues I can work on, because I have such a broad variety of things that I've done, from mental health to public health to child labor. And all of that came through those detailed experiences. Let's see. Are there any other questions?
There was a quick question about mind mapping. Do you do it on paper or digitally?
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, let me just show you for a second. Here we go. I do it everywhere. That's the answer. I will do it on the back of a napkin if you give me one, because this is actually a very good resource at Staples. For $5, you can buy a disposable whiteboard and you can take it wherever you need to do your mind map. So I do it on paper, I do it digitally, but the great resource that I recently found for mind mapping is if you have a paid Canva, which Canva is it's like a design app online for people who are not designers. Canva actually has a really nice mind mapping function inside of it. Also secretly, Zoom has a mind mapping function in its whiteboard. So if you have access to Canva or Zoom, those are great places that you can do a mind map with the team. And then also, if you just want to bring one of these disposable whiteboards to wherever your team is meeting, you can do the mind mapping on the whiteboard and you can take it with you. They're not easily erased, so you can take it with you to the next environment, the next team meeting, to your retrospective, like wherever you're going to be.
Awesome. That's so helpful. Thank you. And there's also another, just as an aside, obviously I'm not the expert today, but I have used a website called Mural to do mind mapping as well with my team when we talk about kind of like planning and brainstorming and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's actually a bunch of them. I've also used Think Bazan's iMindMap. on my iPad. So there's a bunch of them you can download on your phone. So it's a great practice. I think the key with mind mapping is not necessarily that you're just going to roll in there and make a bunch of lines, but that you're really being intentional about the prompts that you give people of what goes in the map. So if you're doing it for project management or project development, you're asking people to help you develop the metrics or develop the outcomes or develop the scope. And then you're tying the budget and the resources to those pieces that are already mapped.
We can go to poll results, and then we do have one more question.
Yeah. Let's see. Cool. So it looks like registering for a course or training, really low barrier, really good, also very cost effective. Just having the discussion. Yes, that's absolutely what we want. Just if you're interested, just try to open up that communication with the next person above you, or even the next person above that if they're the decision maker about resources. Volunteering or job shadowing, again, really great opportunities. Might have to go through that manager conversation to get there, but really good opportunity. And then I love that one person did choose our faux choice, which was, let's just hope for the best for some YouTube videos, which is, hey, University of YouTube has taught me a lot of things, so I'm not going to complain about that one. Awesome. And just on time. Cool. So if we have more questions, we got about 5 minutes, but as you think about this, reflect on it. I know GovLoop is interested in you guys tagging them in anything. If you took screenshots, you're more than welcome to tag me on them. I'm Wendie Veloz on every single platform. You can find me on Instagram and LinkedIn primarily. I also have a podcast called The Social Impact Level Up. That's where I teach people about social entrepreneurship and how it's like inspiring content and how we could all just make a better world. So you're more than welcome to find us on YouTube, on Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. And we release weekly on Fridays. And the other thing is you can just email me. I'm happy to answer any questions after this. I do consult with individual federal, state, and local organizations. I also work directly with your grantees. So I am the person to call if you need to help build sustainability and to really look at the efficiency and effectiveness of what's going on with your grantees. So that's kind of me and what I do and how you can find me. And then, of course, you're always welcome to go to my website, wendieveloz.com. So yeah, I think that I'm done unless there's more questions.
There was one more question, a little bit of an existential one. How do you think AI will affect project management in the future? Will it decrease the need for human project managers?
Oh, that's such a good question. So I am an AI junkie. I love AI for all things, and I try to find it for what it's good for. The thing that I've not found it good for is one, taking a lot of information like community needs that's really qualitative and is not sort of processed already, and being able to make decisions about that. And I think that that is such a human thing because there's a lot of intuition and there's a lot of additional follow-up and pieces that are not going to happen by AI at this point. And so that human element of taking need, mapping it to the goals and objectives and getting to the outcome, I haven't found AI to be able to substitute the human and the people in the project for that yet. Maybe it'll get there one day, but at least for now, what it's good for is synthesizing, right? So if we have the information, if it's already analyzed, if it's already distilled, and it's put into AI, can output us a great summary or output us a great project plan or output us even a budget. I mean, I've developed entire grants in AI, but I had to have the components that went in first, right? So I had to have the needs. I had to have the community feedback. I had to understand what my team was capable of doing. So it wasn't that I could just roll into AI and dump a bunch of stuff in there and bam, project management plan. It was really that I had to understand the components and put them in a way that AI could understand with me. And then make sure I asked it to generate something that was going to be useful for me, because not everything AI generates is useful.
Awesome.
And I love that people are just realizing Canva has, yes, Canva has amazing mind mapping. Go in there and just type in mind map in the search and it'll pop up an interface for you to do the mind map in, and it's different from other designing interfaces in Canva. So just wanted to make sure people knew that it wasn't going to be just a blank page, that it actually pulls up a mind mapping interface within the Canva window.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Wendie. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come chat with us here at NextGen. If anyone does have any questions that you think of later, or if you're watching this at a later date and have questions, Wendie's contact information is here, obviously, so please feel free to reach out to her. So up next, we are in the home stretch of NextGen today. We have our final keynote coming up next. This session will be available to watch on demand in 30 minutes after this. So you can view it again tomorrow and the next day and any other day that you want to watch it, as well as all of the rest of the breakout sessions that happened if there's anything that you missed. As a reminder, we do have the leaderboard going on. So the more active you are, the more points you get, and whoever gets the most points gets gift cards. If you're looking for the CPE credit, make sure to take the evaluation that's on this console or in the resource center. And then, of course, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. So last but not least, we have our closing keynotes for the day starting in about 15 minutes. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Wendie, for taking your time again. I'm so excited. I love this conference. It's my favorite day of the year. And I really appreciate it.
Me, guys. Thank